Now, tonight we've got Barcelona versus Manchester City, and we've got Arsenal against Ludogorets. And joining me now is a man who's just recently written a book about Arsenal. It's called The First Football Histories, the Arsenal FC story. Mark Rasdall, welcome to not to the best in the world, welcome to Sportuccino. I'm getting used
Thanks
to my
very
other
much, Richard.
podcast. Mark, so you've recently written a book about Arsenal. They're facing Ludogorets tonight. They've been unbeaten now since the first game of the season. Are we expecting a walkover, do you think?
Well, it's always worrying when you talk about walkovers and big clubs beating little clubs, isn't it? I think we should remember that Ludogorets have been Bulgarian champions 4 seasons in a row. They're certainly not going to be a pushover. I remember 2 years ago they got a last-minute equaliser at Anfield in the Champions League. They've changed their manager. Quite a few squad members have gone, but the new manager, Bruno Ribeiro, I remember watching him at Leeds, and he knows all about English football without a doubt. I think one thing that came to my mind this morning when I was thinking about this show is that 25 years ago, Arsenal played Benfica at Highbury. They'd drawn 1-1 away, and then, Benfica went on to win with 2 goals in extra time. Arsenal thought they were practically through. There are always occasions when you think you've actually nailed it and things come back to haunt you. I think Ludogorets are a pretty good outfit. They scored at PSG. They got a draw at Basel. There are no easy games, are there, Richard?
They definitely aren't in the Champions League. And Ludogorets have got a striker in Jonathan Cafu, who's got 5 goals in his last 6 matches. And he's facing a defence which is still letting in goals. They're still getting used to each other. You've now got Mustafi playing alongside Koscielny. Do you think the Arsenal defence will be able to cope and keep a clean sheet against Ludogorets?
Well, keeping a clean sheet is another thing, isn't it? When we talk about Arsenal, you and I will remember the famous back line and the George Graham years and, lock it up and take the game. I don't think Arsenal have been that kind of team for a long time. I think Mustafi will be a fine acquisition. I remember him being in the Everton Academy side some years ago under David Moyes, but never really got game time. I think that the player that Arsenal really need to worry about is Marcelino, because he's a natural number 10, a great playmaker, lots of assists, I believe, in the Champions League already. He is the player they're going to have to watch. But Arsenal are going to go out and play their expansive game, aren't they? That's what they do. And we saw against Swansea again on Saturday, the game was definitely Arsenal's in the bag. And, it was a struggle at the end.
And I've got a stat here. Ludogorets have not been beaten away in 7 matches. So they could quite easily come up just to set their stall and not allow Arsenal to get through. We'll get back to a bit more about Arsenal in just a moment, but let's talk about Barcelona versus Manchester City. In fact, I'd like to get your opinions on today's poll, Mark. Who would you rather have in your team? Would you rather have Aguero or Luis Suarez?
Well, it's a very difficult question, of course. I suppose on balance, I would probably take Suarez. I think Aguero is one of those finishers. I know he missed a penalty on Saturday, but he's one that you would put your money on to score when he's in that position. I'm not sure how many positions he's going to be in tonight against Barcelona. But I think with Suarez, he's just one of those players that can conjure something out of absolutely nothing. He can be out of the game and suddenly get a winner. Whereas I think Aguero requires, players like De Bruyne and so on, more creativity around him. Suarez can do it on his own. So I think I would go for Suarez every time. I wish Suarez was still in the Premier League, I have to say.
He was really great in that season where Liverpool nearly won the Premier League title. So Guardiola returns to Barcelona, Mark. Where do you see this match going tonight?
I think you have to favour Barcelona. I mean, the only thing you would say is if you're an engineer and you build a machine, then you're the best person to maintain that machine. Guardiola won, I think, 14 trophies in 4 years at Barcelona, so he's also the person that will know how to stop the machine. The problem is, I'm not sure whether City really have enough to do that. You've got to look at the top 3 of Barcelona always. Messi came back at the weekend and scored again. I don't know whether Company is playing tonight. You may know that.
I don't have confirmation, Mark, but he really is a big player they're missing. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Because if you remember Guardiola's sides at Barcelona, he always had that player who had to play alongside Piqué, who wasn't necessarily a defender. So he did it with
Yes.
Mascherano, he did it with
Yes.
Song, and he's trying to do the same with at City. I think he's tried Fernandinho there. He's tried Kolarov, who's normally a left back.
Yeah.
It's makeshift. Do you think they're defensively stable enough to get a result?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they had some fine displays away from home in the Champions League last year, where people didn't give them a prayer because obviously they were under pressure in the Premier League. I'm not sure. I mean, I think Otamendi and Stones, you have to say that's a work in progress. And you really don't want to be going to the new camp as a work in progress, any team. I also think Barcelona will be inspired by the fact that Real got 5 last night. For the last 2 years, they've knocked City out in the qualifying stages. So I have to say, I think Barcelona will win, and I think they will win comfortably. I think maybe if this tie had happened later on, and of course it could happen again in the kind of later rounds, I think I would give Guardiola's team a better chance. But I don't think Guardiola has got himself organised sufficiently with the players he needs yet.
Now, let's say City lose. That'll be the 4th game in a row where they haven't won. They drew with Celtic, they lost to Spurs, they've drawn with Everton. Let's say they do lose heavily at Barcelona. Does that become a crisis all of a sudden?
Well, it's certainly going to put them under the spotlight even more than they are now, and I think they've got a little cup tie against Manchester United next week, which won't help either. But I mean, they came out the blocks, didn't they? I mean, they won, was it the first 10 games, and they looked absolutely unbeatable. But it also shows you with teams like that, when one of your key players gets injured, it stops, and De Bruyne is obviously the creative force in that team. He's only just came back at the weekend. I'm not sure how fit he is. And I think it will depend on keeping your best players fit. And for City, I think that's a concern.
I think you're right there, Mark. I think Kevin De Bruyne's a very, very good player.
Yeah.
Did you watch the football last night? Did you see Leicester? What did you think of their performances? It's amazing how they're doing so well in the Champions League, but stuttering in the Premier League.
It's almost a reverse of a cliche, isn't it? That when you get knocked out of the cup, you kind of console yourselves by saying we're going to concentrate on the league. With Leicester, it seems to be the other way around. I think they've got more points in the Champions League than the Premier League this season. And it's almost as if last season, as we all know, can they stay the pace? Can they do it? Will they actually go on and win the Premier League? And it's almost as if they're saying, well, no one gives us a prayer in the Champions League this season either, so we're going to prove everybody wrong. Incredible. Also, I don't think they've conceded a goal yet, and yet in the Premier League they don't look like the kind of defensive force, or maybe domestic teams have worked them out. I'm not sure, but great for British football. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. When they play in the Champions League, I want to watch Leicester, which imagine 3 years ago, I'd have been like, Leicester in the Champions League? No way.
I know, it's crazy.
I wouldn't even want to watch them if they were in the Champions League, but I want to watch them every time now. But you're completely right about the defensive frailties, because you look at Diego Costa's goal, for example, on Saturday, and he scored it completely unmarked in the penalty area, whereas defender left him completely unmarked. And Leicester of last season wouldn't have done that.
They wouldn't have done that, and I think Kante going to Chelsea, I know it's an easy excuse to make, but I think that when you have a player like Kante in front of your defence, he's breaking so many things up, all the time, and it's all the things he's doing on the pitch that you don't notice, and you only really notice a player like that when he's not there. And I think he'll be a fine player for Chelsea, and Leicester undoubtedly miss him in front of that defence, I think.
Well, Mark, let's go back to Arsenal for a moment. Of course, you've recently written a book called First Football Histories, the Arsenal FC Story. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I think the thing is that when you're reading about football, there's obviously a story of the club and how it evolved. I mean, 130 years of history in Arsenal's case, but there are also so many other things going on around it. And what I wanted to do was try and encourage teenagers in particular to get back to history, not just about football. So they're reading about Arsenal's history, they're reading about the Boer War, they're reading about the Cold War, they're reading about all kinds of changes that have happened in Britain in the last 130 years. And they're also finding out about where places are. So, a lot of people who will be looking at the match tonight won't have a clue where Bulgaria is. I've got a friend who's a teacher, and she thought that she would have a geography lesson for year nines, and they would plot all of the Premier League teams on a map of England. And how many do you think they actually were able to do, Richard?
Yeah, not many, I don't think.
Three out of 20. And, this is just incredible. So I'm trying to write books that actually talk about the football stories, but also about history and also about geography, to try and give people a better understanding of the role that clubs play and also the things that happen in the world that affect clubs outside of our football bubble. And that's what they're really all about. So, yes, Arsenal came out about a month ago, and Chelsea is next.
It is amazing what you can pick up about other things when you have a particular interest in one thing. For example, I'm a massive WWE fan, and
Right.
I now have this really random knowledge of knowing which American cities are in which states. Like you'd say St. Louis, I'd say Missouri. You say Boise, I'll say Idaho. All because wrestlers come from those certain places. And it works. I remember I met the son of Johnny Vaughan, the radio presenter, and he must have been about 8 or 9 years old at the time. And he just had an encyclopedic memory of all of these different places, of all of the heights and weights of every wrestler. And I think what you're doing is a really, really good idea, because people will go, oh, I remember when Arsenal won this happened. So I think that's really great. So you've done Arsenal now. What else is in the pipeline? Are there other teams you've got plans of books you're going to produce?
Yeah, well, Chelsea should be out before Christmas. That's a completely different story to Arsenal. People think that Chelsea is all about Abramovich, and sort of the recent years. It's really not. Chelsea were a very wealthy club from the start, and Arsenal were dirt poor, absolutely dirt poor. It's incredible to think that we're talking about the Champions League game tonight for a team that everybody hated at the time, because the gentility of Kent did not want a football team when they were based in Woolwich. So Chelsea's next, Spurs after Christmas, and then West Ham and Palace.
Well, we look forward to reading all of them, Mark. Mark, where exactly will we be able to buy them?
Yeah, Amazon. They're available on Amazon. You can buy the book, and you can also get the books in Kindle format as well. So hop along to Amazon and you'll find them on there, Richard.
I look forward to reading. I've got a Kindle. I love the Kindle, so I'll download them and read them as
Fantastic.
well. Mark, any other websites, any other social media handles where we can continue to learn from you?
Yes, well, there's a website at www.thefootballground.com, which is really a kind of portal for all club information. So, for example, if you're looking forward to tonight's game as an Arsenal fan or a City fan, there are pages on there full of content all about news, social media feeds, everything, blogs, forums, TV schedules, just about your club. So rather than spending a lot of time cruising around the web trying to find content, you can find it all there. It's all free, easy to use, and we're on Facebook and Twitter as well, Richard.
Wonderful. Well, Mark Rasdall, thank you so much for your time this morning. Author of the first Football Histories, the Arsenal FC story, and from thefootballground.com. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Richard.